Hi, welcome to The Truth with Tal and Isaac. I'm Tal. This is Isaac. And we're here to talk about sports. Every week we'll drop an episode, generally focused on the four majors. We'll mix in some college hoops, some college football, a little bit of tennis, a little bit of golf. We're going to focus a lot on Detroit sports just because we live in South Detroit. We are also going to mix in some movies, some movie franchises, like Superman's cool. And we generally just want to have some fun. Our goal is to bring our dinner conversations to the show and to share the truth on the latest and greatest, or at least what we deem as the truth. You can find us on YouTube, where we'll post everything, and on any podcast apps that Isaac can get us on. All the links will be in the description of this video. So without further ado, live from the LFX studios, here's The Truth with Tal and Isaac.
All right, so the bulk of today's show, we're going to cover the winners and losers of the NBA offseason. So it seems like yesterday, but the finals ended almost 2 months ago, where Jimmy put up a good fight against the Lakers. We'll talk more about Jimmy later on, but 2 months since the offseason started. So
craziest season in history, for sure.
Yeah, there's an asterisk next to that championship. I don't want to say negative or positive. Like, if Miami won, I still would have said that. And I'm a big Heat homer. We'll cover that later again. But I think either way, whoever won, there's an asterisk next to this championship. Do you agree?
Everybody's going to remember the bubble. The bubble we're going to talk about for 40 years. We might even forget some of the crazy pandemic stuff, but we're going to remember the bubble.
And looking back on these games, like, obviously the Black Lives Matter on the court and on the jerseys, like, it looks different, no fans. And then we're all going to remember Tyler Herro's heroic performance in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics.
I can't really do the sneer.
He can't do this now. So we each picked 3 winners and 3 losers. We're going to cover them. So to begin with, I made sure I got this team because I'm really hot on them for the upcoming season, and that's the Atlanta Hawks. Now, most people know the Atlanta Hawks as just kind of a young, okay team from the East.
It's a good pick.
With Trae Young. So I think a lot went down, some of it pretty quiet for Atlanta. So let's look at some guards that they brought in at the point guard position. So they brought in Chris Dunn and Rajon Rondo. Now, Chris Dunn, we're going to spend a minute on. He's not an everyday name. Not everybody knows him. But do you remember when we saw him in Chicago, I think 3 years ago?
Yeah, we saw him, and he was awesome. He just fills the stat sheets. High energy player. I like Chris Dunn a lot.
Mainly on defense, like quick feet, good hands, running all over the place.
Well, they need somebody to play defense because for sure it's not Trae Young.
Yeah, that's Trae Young's a 30-point, 10-assist game, but
in the playoffs, you need to play defense.
You got to play defense. So
okay, you keep talking about the Hawks.
They picked up Chris Dunn, who is a huge addition for them. Again, not everybody knows him, but he's going to play a big role. And then they picked up Rajon Rondo. Now, I'm not huge on Rondo as some of the other guys. I think he's not even close to what he was in Boston. He had
a good 3-week stretch in the playoffs. I'll give you that, but not much in the regular season. I don't think he's suddenly that great a three-point shooter. Keep going. Yeah. I like some of the other pickups.
I don't really understand the whole playoff Rondo thing. Like genuinely, like he'll hit 2 more contested layups throughout the course of a playoff series, and he's playoff Rondo.
He hit some threes.
He had a couple lucky. Yeah. I don't really get it. So playoff Rondo they signed. If they get to the playoffs, maybe they can unlock 4 more points that Rajon's going to give them. But regardless, they need some veteran leadership on this team. It's a really, really young roster. If you look at them, it's a lot of second-year, third-year guys. So bringing in Rondo, going to take Trae Young under his wing. I like the pickup, even though I don't love the player. And then let's look at some of the shooters they picked up. So they picked up 2 shooters. Danilo Gallinari, who he's a big fan of.
Big
fan of Danilo Gallinari. And then they got Bogdanovic. So if we look at Gallinari, the definition of a stretch 4. Like 6'10", can shoot the lights out, pull up from probably 30 feet pretty comfortably. And honestly, I thought he was going to go to a win-now team. I don't think Atlanta's win-now. I think Philly or maybe Miami or Toronto or maybe the Clippers. I thought he was going to go to a bigger team, but he signed in Atlanta, and I think that he can be big for them. Trae Young, again, like I said, he's a 10 assists per game guy, I think, and picking up a shooter like Gallinari is just going to help him big time. And then as for Bogdanovich, we're not going to talk too much about the whole Milwaukee deal. I didn't really understand that. I still don't. But either way. Tampering. He's in Atlanta. I don't care about Milwaukee. And then Clint Capella. Now, Clint Capella was an absolute monster for Houston, and they barely used him. They used him for defense, for some rebounds, and kicking out to Harden.
Well, after Harden shoots at 45 times a game and Westbrook shoots at 20 times a game, there's not a lot of shots left.
Not a lot of offense to go around. But I think in Atlanta, he's going to get some looks. I think the pick and roll with him and Trae Young is going to be good. So I think picking up Capella, pretty big for them. And he was injured for a lot of last season, but he'll come back better this season. And then for the draft, I liked him for a long time, Onyeka Okongwu, who's the center from USC. Like a couple weeks before the draft, he was projected like late first. Like he was going mid to late first. I thought he was going to fall to a couple of the teams that I wanted to pick him later on, but Atlanta picked him at 6. Some of the earlier mock drafts, or the more recent mock drafts, had him going closer to the top, but no one really had 6th overall.
Listen, I like Atlanta's offseason. They did well, but realistically, they are not going to be higher than a 7th or 8th seed in the East. There's a lot of East teams. So I like what the Hawks did. They are not going to win a first-round playoff next year, maybe 2 years from now.
I agree. They're not win now.
Listen, I got to move to my pick, and my pick is the obvious one for winning the offseason. The Lakers, right? Dennis Schrader was one of the first dudes to sign, and as soon as they signed him, I'm like, great, 2021 is already done. Unless LeBron blows an ACL or AD gets a shoulder pull out of his socket, they're going to win. And both LeBron and AD have been pretty solid from an injury perspective. So they got great role players with 6th Man of the Year candidates Schrader and Trez Harrell. And, the complaints about Trez not being there for closing games. So what? He's going to allow LeBron and AD to do all sorts of load management. And so what if he doesn't play the last 5 minutes? He's going to get lots of points, lots of board. He's going to lead the second unit, which has been awful since LeBron got to LA. If LeBron walks off the court, they don't score any points. Trez is going to help him do that. Plus, they got Marc Gasol, who is one of the best big man passers in history. Now, his three-point shot was off in the bubble. I think he's going to get it back a little bit. Plus, he is going to be wide open. And think about who the Lakers are going to go against in the playoffs, right? Like, who do you want guarding
you can't match
the
up
Joker? No, I can match the Joker. That's a good guard. And then Wesley Matthews, a little bit of an under-radar guy. But listen, we were talking about this in our show prep. You need to start talking about the Lakers. Say it.
I think they're going to three-peat.
And he hates LeBron.
And I hate LeBron.
But they are spectacular for the next couple of years.
If you, hopefully, obviously, you don't want anyone to get injured. And assuming no one prominent, like Braun or AD or one of those guys gets injured, I don't see what's going to stop them. LeBron is in his 50th year in the league, honestly. I just don't think he's going to, he'll slow down, sure, but I don't think he's going to come nearly close to what people thought he was going to slow down to in LA. Some people thought he was going to LA to make movies. Yeah, he can make Space Jam 2 and 3 and 4, but he's playing basketball. He wants rings.
Yes, he does.
He knows that if he wants to get anywhere close to Michael, and I didn't want to bring up his name, but we'll talk about him more later. If he wants to get anywhere close to Michael, he needs to have 5 rings.
Yep.
And he's got 4, and I think he can win at least a couple more with the Lakers.
Okay. Who do you got?
Next winner, first of all, shout out to my guy, Evan. He's been a Philly fan for a long time, and he was really hot on them. So I'm going to go with the Sixers here. Now, let's just talk about addition by subtraction in Philadelphia. So Al Horford, he's gone. I like Al Horford as a player. I think he can be a good role player on a solid team. But his contract is awful. One of the worst in probably the past decade in NBA.
Yep.
And then Brett Brown. Now, Brett Brown, again, is not a household name. He was their head coach for seemingly a very, very long time. Now, Brett Brown coached them during the process era. So, when they just tanked to get Embiid, to get Okafor, to get Simmons, he was their coach. And they got good, and they kept Brett Brown. So, he's not a winning coach. He did nothing for that team except bring them back. He's the reason why they lost Jimmy. He's the reason why they haven't won anything with Ben and Joel yet. So I think losing Brett Brown is huge. And then let's look at who they brought in. Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is a great coach. I know it didn't end very well with the Clippers. I still think he's a sweet coach, and he's going to further develop Joel and Ben Simmons. And then Philly's biggest issue was probably shooting.
For sure there was.
When you have a point guard, who I love Ben Simmons, but he cannot shoot anything more than 5 feet comfortably. When you have a point guard that can't shoot at all, it shrinks the court. And Embiid can stretch the floor a bit. Last year, I know he shot poorly. I think that was a fluke. I think he'll get a shot back. But if you look at the shooters they brought in, Seth Curry, Danny Green. Now, Seth Curry is a career, 44% three-point shooter. No one talks about him because his brother's Steph Curry, and when he was in Dallas, it was the Luka and Porzingis show. But he's going to get some shots up with Philly, with Ben Simmons, and then they got Danny Green. Now, I know all the memes about Danny Green. He's a great 3-and-D player, and he'll have some shots. He'll have some shots for Philly for sure. And then I'll go with their draft. I think they're 21st overall. They picked Tyrese Maxey, who's the guard from Kentucky. Really, really good playmaker, good pull-up jumper, and a point guard who can shoot, which is kind of what they needed. So Philly, look out. I think they'll contend, maybe not for the Eastern Conference title, but I bet they'll be a top 4 seed.
Listen, I like Philly. I like Embiid, but he has to work on his fitness, and Simmons needs to be able to shoot. Until those two things happen, they're not going to make it past the second round in the East.
So let's talk about what do you think Simmons needs to develop in terms of shooting?
15-footer. A 15-footer is all you need. You need somebody when you're doing a pick and roll. You don't listen. I know everything is in the NBA in threes, but when you look at the playoffs, there was a lot of important 2-point buckets. Right? Jimmy did not shoot a lot of threes, but he hit a lot of twos. And even LeBron and AD, they won by hitting twos, not threes. So I'm okay with hitting some hooks and some 15-footers. Simmons needs to be able to hit a 15-footer. They are not a championship team until then. And honestly, picking up Dwight Howard, that's a negative. Dwight Howard, cancer is maybe too strong a word, but he's bad.
Okay, I completely disagree with Dwight Howard. If you just look at the amount of minutes he's going to get,
four too many. Plus all the damage in the locker room, terrible pickup.
Damage in the locker room? What are you talking about, damage in the locker room?
He's a lunatic. Do the research.
He's not
He's
that
wrong.
bad. Marcus Smart is worse.
Okay, Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart is worse.
Yeah, okay.
I like
Howard.
Howard. I like Howard. He doesn't. I don't think he's Orlando Dwight Howard.
Listen, he's not Superman from 10 years ago. Anyway, I'll tell you my second offseason winner, the Suns. Again, a little controversial, but I love Chris Paul. He is a winner. Right? The future of the Suns is not Chris Paul. The future of the Suns is Devin Booker. And anybody you can be, and anybody you can build around him. But they picked up Jay Crowder and Langston Galloway, who's a good Piston, and Etuan Moore. So the Suns, I look at more as a bit of a long-term play to develop their guys and to develop a winning culture, which I love, right? The Suns were awesome in the bubble, right? And I think that momentum leads to potentially a top 4 seed in the West. There's going to be a couple teams in the West that take a step back, and I think the Suns have the potential to jump in. Again, I still think they're not winning more than 2 playoff series, but I really like the Suns and the Chris Paul move to set up the Devin Booker show in the future.
Similar to Atlanta, I think, both those two teams.
Similar to
in
Atlanta.
terms of where they are compared to their competition. They're not win now. They've got some young guys. They both added some vets. So I'll go with my last winner. Now, some people had them as losers. I have the Celtics as a winner. So again, like with Philly, addition by subtraction. Is Gordon Hayward worth $120 million?
No way. It's one of the worst contracts for sure this offseason, but maybe like one of the worst ones in the top in the last 10 years.
Like pre-injury, Gordon Hayward is not even worth that much. I think pre-injury, Gordon Hayward.
Pre-injury, he was a scorer. He was an all-around player
in Utah.
He's never going to have that much explosion. And guess what? I don't think he can be a ball-dominant guy. I agree with you.
So losing Hayward, I think, is good because honestly, although he gave him 20 points or whatever, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are guys that should be getting those 20 points distributed to them. Maybe 15 of them to Jaylen Brown, and you can give Jason Tatum 5 of them. I like Brown a lot more than he does.
Tatum is an all-star. And Brown is maybe.
Brown will be an all-star for sure.
Okay.
We had that. We made a bet.
We debated
like
that 3 years ago.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So obviously losing Hayward, I like for those young guys. And then Jason Tatum. Again, I don't love Jason Tatum. Like, I think he's a good scorer who's very, very inconsistent on defense. And honestly, he's very streaky on offense. If you watch the bubble, watch the playoffs.
He was not great in the bubble.
He was just all over the place. Like, he'd have 30-point halves, and then he would have 0-point halves. That's not an exaggeration. Like, he did that.
You know, it's going to be really interesting to see how people come out, because who knows what the NBA is going to look like in the next 3 months. But there's still some of the ramifications of the bubble, and some of these guys had a really tough time. And candidly, a lot of them talked about mental health for the first time. It seemed to be a situation where mental health was relevant. PG talked a ton about it.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. But you need to talk about Tristan Thompson, maybe the best Canadian big man ever.
Yeah, so they picked up 2 vets. They picked up Jeff Teague and Tristan Thompson. Now, Jeff Teague, he's just going to be their backup point guard for Kemba. They had Brad Wanamaker, who left. I think Teague is better than Wanamaker, so I think you win there.
Yeah, and actually, news came out today that Kemba's going to miss a bit of time just because he had an injury. So Jeff Teague is a good guy to back up and take some minutes.
And I don't know if they'll start Teague. Like, I have no idea what their lineup's going to look like, because there's lots of talk about small ball and playing like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown at like the 3 and the 4. I don't know where they're going to play him now, but Teague might start a few games, especially Kemba, like I think they're saying early January. But when it's this kind of an injury, like, it wouldn't be surprised if I go mid to late January.
And guess what? They're going to let it ride. There's going to be so much load management this year. It's going to be frustrating for the fans because we want to see the normal NBA. Guess what? We're not. We're not going to see normal sports for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to jump into...
let me finish with Boston, because I got to talk about the draft. So they picked Aaron Nesmith. He's probably the best shooter in the draft. Like, he's a knockdown shooter. I think he's small forward. Best shooter in the class. So they picked him up. And then 26th overall, I know he's smiling. They got Peyton Pritchard. Do you know that name?
I heard it just because you talked about it, but Isaac did a lot more show prep than me.
No, Pritchard went to Oregon, I think for 4 years, 4 or 5 years, because I think he might have been redshirted.
So he's a 23-year-old rookie?
He's older.
Sekou Doumbouya is not even 20 yet.
Okay, don't talk about Sekou. We'll talk about him later. So if you look at Pritchard, go and look up some highlights of this kid. The big comp is Fred VanVleet. It's similar. He's got a similar build to VanVleet, but he pulls up from anywhere. Like, he's not a great shooter, but he will pull up like Dame range.
That's the new NBA.
So
and VanVleet was not drafted. So
go after the show. Watch some Peyton Pritchard highlights.
I don't think that's a great pick for an off-season winner, but pretty sure my off-season winner is going to be more controversial. I'm picking the Pistons. Now, you can debate the merits of signing about 5 centers, but here's the thing. Detroit sports has sucked for the last few years. So for the first time in a decade, really the first time since the Bad Boys.
Yeah, 2.0. Chauncey.
The Chauncey and the Ben Wallace, those bad boys. Pistons are actually relevant and a topic of conversation. I still think they're going to move D Rose, and once Griffin shows he's healthy, they're going to move him. So I think what they're trying to do is they're just trying to get guys that are solid players that are not awful contracts. They don't all fit right. They're going to have some dead money they're going to spread over a few years. But the Pistons are relevant to talk about. And to me, that's a win because, listen, we're big fans. We go to everything we can. We watch everything we can. But it's tough being a Detroit sports fan right now.
Yeah.
I was talking to some dudes in Guelph on Saturday, and I brought up how tough it is to be a Detroit's fan. And they kind of went through it. Pistons, Red Wings, Lions.
0-4.
Yeah. It's rough. And then when you include Michigan football, it's sucking.
Yeah.
The fact that national pundits are talking about the Pistons, I consider it to be a win. And they signed LiAngelo Ball today. He's got to be a solid 13th man.
Maybe 14.
Right? If your first 2 point guards get injured and the guy you signed from the G League gets COVID, then Ball's going to get some playing time.
Do you know what position he plays? Like, I don't.
Oh, wait a sec. I think he's a wing. He's not a point guard.
He's a wing who can't shoot, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's not a big thing in the NBA. Well, 13th guy, so not your third point guard. So he's your third.
Well, they don't have any small forwards, right? If they play him at the 3, because I don't even know where he play Sekou.
Sekou's really a 4, but
Can he guard for us?
Probably can. Listen, the Pistons are going to be entertaining. They're probably going to be a top 3 lottery team next year. They're entertaining. They got some guys. D Rose is fun to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know how long they're going to keep D Rose for. I don't know when the new trade deadline is, but I'd be shocked if they keep him past the new trade deadline. So I know Pistons winning the offseason is controversial, but we're talking about them. So I think that's a win.
I completely disagree. I kind of get what you're saying in terms of we're saying the Pistons name, which we the big NBA guys haven't talked about the Pistons since 2005.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're talking about them, but it's not good press. LiAngelo Ball, like I don't want to hear. Like I saw LiAngelo Ball got signed. I'm like I hope it's not. I'm not that team. I was hoping it was going to be like Charlotte or one of those teams. No, it was Detroit.
Oh, it's bad. It's bad.
I don't like it.
We have 3 biggest losers. We're going to spend a little time on our 3 biggest losers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to touch on my 3, then Isaac will flip to his. So the Hornets, again, the Gordon Hayward contract, awful. And they drafted a point guard that cannot shoot and likely will never play good D. Hornets, loser. The Warriors, I love the Warriors. They are fun to watch. They are the funnest team to watch in the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, when you lose one of the best shooting guards in history, and let's be clear, Klay Thompson is one of the best shooting guards in history.
I agree.
You lose the offseason. Yeah, Wiseman, I think he's a solid pick, but the Warriors went from a top 3 candidate to win to a 6 seed that maybe they take a couple of games in the first round. Awful. The Clippers. So the Clippers going into the bubble, you had to think it's theirs to
they're the favorite.
lose. They're the favorite. They had
right.
the pieces to beat the Lakers, and they really geared themselves up to win and to beat the Lakers. And they were poop for a lot of reasons. Playoff PG, awful. I mean, listen, Kawhi did a spectacular job with the Raptors last year. Really, really great. He helped the Raptors and he helped the entire country of Canada become basketball fans. He didn't seem to have it. And I'm not sure if it was his players
He looked terrible.
Yeah, he didn't look good. But the Clippers needed to do something this offseason in order to compete. They're now a step below. And they do not have very many first-round draft picks. So if the Clippers don't do something this year, that team is going to be torn apart, and they have nothing to build upon.
And then look at who they lost. Montrezl Harrell. They lost Montrezl Harrell. And Doc Rivers, for that matter. I think losing Harrell, don't look at where Harrell went. You lost Montrezl Harrell. That sucks. Look at where he went.
Yep.
It makes it 10 times worse.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about the Warriors for a quick minute.
Sure.
So James Wiseman, in terms of potential and his peak, where do you rank him among other guys this class?
So, where's his ceiling?
Yeah,
That's a great question.
because I think he might have the highest peak, the most potential of anyone in this draft.
Well, after Killian Hayes, because his ceiling is huge.
Oh, I'll talk about him.
No, it's probably him. I just assume Ball is going to be a guy who just plays, who puts up some numbers, was never going to be great. Who's the rook that Minnesota picked? Edwards, is that his name?
Anthony Edwards, yeah.
Yeah, solid athlete. I didn't see anything that... Listen, there was no star. So who in this draft is the person most likely to make an all-star team? I think it's probably Wiseman.
Probably Wiseman and Denny Avdia.
Oh, yeah, the guy from Israel. That's awesome.
You like Denny?
He's the best Israeli player since who? Since Tal Brody. Another Tal. He was a sweet player.
Do your research on that one.
Maccabi Tel Aviv. Tal Brody. Look that guy up. Awesome. On the Map. It's a great movie.
Shout out No.
Yeah, shout out no. Okay. Let's hit Isaac's losers.
So I think probably the biggest loser in the offseason, and I don't want to just poke fun at them, but it's got to be the Knicks.
They're terrible.
It's okay. So they had so much cap. So I expected them to. I thought Van Fleet.
Who'd they sign? You have to be a Knicks fan because I don't know who they signed. Isaac wrote down who they signed, so I see.
I want to go through it because it's pretty entertaining. So let's look at who they could have gotten, could have or should have. So Van Vliet, I actually thought they were going to sign. I thought He got his ring in Toronto. Now he's just going to get money and get buckets in New York. I thought he was going to go there. They didn't land him. Gordon Hayward, who isn't great, but I thought they were going to get Gordon Hayward. Didn't get him. Christian Wood from Detroit. They couldn't get Christian Wood. And then I put down Westbrook. I still think there's a very real possibility they get Westbrook, considering how terrible their offseason's been. So they haven't gotten Westbrook, and I don't like Westbrook for the most part, but he would be an addition to that team because he'd make them watchable. So that's who they could have gotten. Now this is who they got. Nerlens Noel, Elfrid Payton, Alec Burks, Austin Rivers, Omari Spellman, and Bismack Biyombo.
So that sounds like a list of overrated draft failures the last 10 years.
Yep, no, Nerlens Noel standing out. Like, I think the only guy that's actually going to be in a positive addition is Austin Rivers.
I like Peyton a little bit. Peyton's not bad.
He's a backup point guard. Like,
He's got good
Bismack
hair.
Biyombo was
Sweet hair.
Bismack Biyombo was fun to watch in like 2016 when he got lots of blocks with Toronto.
Yeah. He had one good playoff series, and he translated that into loads of cash.
And
Who'd
now
they draft?
Who, the Knicks?
Yeah. Do they have draft picks, or did they trade them all away for?
No, they
Charles
had picks.
Oakley.
They had 7 overall. So no,
Oh, they
sorry,
didn't
they
have
were
7
8. They were
overall.
8. They were 8 because they're after Detroit. So they picked Toppin. I
Okay.
believe they picked Obi Toppin. I think he was 8th overall.
He's the dunker, right?
He's the dunker from Dayton, I think.
Yep, dunker from Dayton.
I like Obi Toppin. Like, I think he's going to be fun to watch, and I think him fitting in New York, like I see that. But if you look at who was on the board, we talked about him earlier. Denny Avdia, man, I don't know how. And the fact that they drafted Porzingis when nobody knew him, European dude. I actually thought they were going to pick Denny Avdia because they'd shown in the past that they're okay making a bigger pick like that.
Oh, Dallas and New York, they've done well with international
Especially
players.
Dallas.
San Antonio as well has done well with international players.
So they picked Obi Toppin over Denny Avdia. If I was the Knicks, I would rather have Denny Avdia. Like we talked about with ceiling, I think his is up there in terms of highest in the draft. And they didn't get him. They got Obi Toppin. I think he'll have some good highlights, but I like maybe an all-star in a bunch of years, tops. Like, I don't think he'll be anything more
The
than...
next couple of drafts are stacked. That's going to bump all these guys down even lower.
Yeah, so then my loser, his winner, the Pistons. Okay, so I understand that we're talking about them, but you'll even agree with me on most of these. They have zero idea of what they're doing. Zero idea.
Making up their lineup is tough. I'll grant
They're
you
going to
that.
play Blake Griffin at the shooting guard position. That's what, like, they're so big, it doesn't make any sense. So they have no idea of what they're doing.
Hey, if this was 1986, the Pistons would be sweet. They'd
They'd
be
be sweet.
beating the crap out of everybody.
Yeah, they'd be pretty physical.
Unfortunately, it's not 1986.
So, like, if we look at rebuild or not, it's hard to tell if they're rebuilding or if they're not. The two most valuable pieces they have are probably D Rose and Blake. Would you agree?
For 2020, 2021 basketball, I agree. I think they've got guys like Sekou and Hayes that are good potential guys. I like the rookie Stewart. And who's the other dude from Day something or other? What's
I
his
don't
name?
remember his name. I don't know his name.
Yeah, he's supposed to be pretty good. Jeremy Grant is a good third guy, maybe a good fourth
Let
guy.
me talk
They
about
paid
Grant
a fair
for a
amount of money
minute.
for him.
So he's good. Like, if you watch the bubble, he was a big role in Denver's offense.
Good defender as well.
Good defender. Like, he's just big and lanky. Like, Denver played their big, like, mega lineup with Bol, and they played Grant at the 2. Like, I think he's...
Really?
Yeah, I think he's
Wow.
maybe like 6'8", and they played him at the 2. So Grant, like, I expected him to go to one of the contenders. Detroit. Makes zero sense. It makes no sense. He's a really good player. He'll be good in Detroit, but why? Like, unless you trade him, I don't understand the pick. And then back to D Rose and Blake. D Rose they should have traded last year at the deadline. He's the only thing that him and Blake are the only thing that make the Pistons watchable.
Yep.
Like, when we're sitting on the couch at 7 o'clock, we put on the Pistons game, but we're not really watching. Especially if D Rose isn't playing that
We're
much.
probably watching Rocky for the 78th time.
Rocky or die.
And maybe we'll try and watch a little bit of the Pistons game.
So
I think Grant's got a guy they're probably going to flip next year. He's a solid dude. He'll get some boards, he'll get some buckets. He'll play good D. but he's probably a guy they flip. The Pistons are not going to be good for 5 years. They are a long way away.
Then they should start on getting rid of who they need to get rid of.
Trust the process.
Well, it's a long process.
Okay, maybe the Pistons should not have been one of the top 3 winners. Okay, I'll grant you that.
You'll grant me that. Jeremy grant me that.
I'll Jeremy grant you that.
And then at the draft, I don't like Hayes at 7.
We don't know. We have no tape on these guys. A lot of them didn't play last year. He's got some
Denny.
good international ball.
Should have picked Denny.
I wanted them to pick Denny, but listen, I got to cheer for something. I love the Pistons. I love all the local teams. I got to give them something. We're going to flip more into a topic that is kind of a timely topic all the time, and it's relevant for, sorry, a little loud on the mic. It's relevant for everybody who's a football fan. Top 5 quarterbacks of all time. So what Isaac and I did is independently made up our list of top 5, and we're just going to debate them. So I'm going to say my one. Isaac's going to say his one. We're going to debate real quickly. Again, we don't want to get into too much detail here, but
Not going to throw a bunch of numbers and stats at you.
Nope.
That's not our job.
no,
So.
we're just going to give you our opinion. And I've got Joe Montana down as the best quarterback of all time. He did not have the stats. He played in the 80s when Walter Payton and John Riggins, when running backs ruled the league. He was electric. He was so much fun to watch. And when it came to Super Bowls, he was amazing. Now, throw into Jerry Rice, who may be the best player in history. Does that help him? For sure. But don't forget, Joe Montana had a great college career at Notre Dame. Joe Montana was spectacular. So I think everybody knows who Isaac's going to pick. Maybe the jersey behind will be an indicator to that. I got Joe Montana number 1. Isaac, who do you got? I'm sure it's Brady.
So I don't hate Montana at 1. Like, I think it's, you don't lose with either, but I have Tom Brady as the best quarterback of all time. Look, like,
Pretty consensus pick.
he was the leader of probably the greatest dynasty in maybe sports history. You can make that argument. That's probably discussion.
That's a
for another
future
day.
topic. Those Celtics were pretty good for a long time.
Yeah, but Patriots are up there, like, for almost 2 decades.
For a 20-year stretch, yeah, I agree with you.
So he led that team. When you look up winning, like, it's Tom Brady. He's 43 right now in Tampa. He's still in the MVP conversation. Like, I'm not going to say he's the MVP.
Super hot wife.
If you just look at the MVP conversation, like, he's 43, and he's probably not top 5, but he's still up there. So I have Tom Brady, number 1, no question.
Okay,
No question.
I'll agree. I mean, I've got Brady slotted in number 2. The perfect cog in the New England machine. Easy vote to have him as the GOAT. I put him at number 2. He made all pros out of 5'10 dudes who were not that good. And he also made all pros like Randy Moss even better. Brady's an easy number 2. Who do you got for number 2, Isaac?
Montana.
Oh, okay.
Again, flip-flop, like, it doesn't
We're
matter.
going to find a fair amount of similarity between us.
My truth is just better than his truth. But
Sure.
no, we look at Joe Montana, like, best duo in history, and for sure football history, up there with, like, Mike and Pippen.
Ooh, best duo in history is another good topic.
Montana and Rice, and as awesome as Brady was. Not that this makes you any better, but Brady didn't really have a number 2. Like, he's had Gronk for a long time. He had Welker, he had Edelman, he had Moss, but he didn't have a number 2. Montana always had his number 2.
Okay, good. Actually, I'm going to, again, step a little bit outside the box. I'm going Johnny Unitas as my top 3 quarterback of all time. Again, started as a 9th-round draft pick and turned into one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, and certainly the guy who revolutionized the position in the late 50s through the 60s, modernized the passing game, the ultimate team player, ultimate winner, loads of passing yards. His numbers don't stack up, but again, it was a completely different game. And I give it to Johnny Unitas as number 3.
So my number 3, and I don't know how out of the box this is, but I've Peyton at 3. I've Peyton Manning at 3. In terms of brain, like, he's maybe the smartest football player ever. His brain, his body wasn't always the best, but he's one of the smartest football players ever. The fact that he had that injury and was able to come back and win a ring in Denver. I know he wasn't at his MVP form in Denver, but the fact that he won a ring coming off that injury is pretty crazy. And to do what he did on 2 teams, Indy and Denver. So
Yep.
I Peyton at 3.
Fair enough. Okay, I've got John Elway at number 4, one of the best athletes to ever play the position. Again, doing a little bit of show prep. Did you know that he played his entire career without an ACL in his right knee? He's a beast. I remember when I was a kid when he was just starting to gain some traction in Denver, and he's limping around the field during a playoff game. He mostly threw to an average receiving core. And again, just think about stats and think about in the 80s and the 90s how you were able to muscle up their wide receivers a lot. Elway did a lot of great things, and he was really a joy to watch.
So with my 4, he said him earlier, Johnny Unitas at 4. If you do some research, like the 2-minute drill, he basically created. Like if you look at the origin of the 2-minute drill, it's basically Johnny Unitas just running around on a football field. And even guys like Elway and Montana played in a more physical era. Johnny Unitas just got clocked. Like there are 0 restrictions on hitting and rules. Like if you factor that in, Brady and Manning had like the whole tuck rule and all that stuff. Like they were protected, especially the guys that are playing right now. The younger guys coming into the league, your Deshaun Watson and your Mahomes and Kyler Murray, they're going to be so protected in their careers. Whereas these older guys just get hammered every play, especially Elway. Elway was one who took a lot of shots, but I've got Johnny U there.
Okay, so again, lots of solid candidates for this list. And I had Peyton Manning at number 5. I had Dan Marino up there. I had Drew Brees up there. I'm going to go outside the box. I'm going to go Warren Moon as number 5. People forget that when Warren Moon... No, think about this. When Warren Moon left college, well, listen, you know what black running quarterbacks did then? They played wide receiver, or they played tight end, or they played DB. Warren Moon went to the CFL, and he won 5 Grey Cups with the Edmonton Eskimos. So then he didn't come to the NFL until he was later in his career, and he was amazing. So when you combine some of his CFL stats, which I know don't count, and his NFL stats, Warren Moon was awesome. Talking about a guy who could chuck it, Warren Moon could chuck it. Although realistically, when Isaac and his son do this podcast in 20 years or 25 years or whenever the hell that happens, Patty Mahomes, he's special. He is special.
Yeah, and there's some debate. Now, I want to know what you think about this. I know my stance. Right now, Patrick Mahomes, if he retired today, is he a Hall of Famer?
Nope.
I agree.
Nope, he has not proven enough. Listen, the Hall of Fame is special. Like, Terrell Davis, who was the running back for Denver during the tail end of Elway's career, he was awesome. He might have only played like 7 seasons.
He didn't play a lot.
And he barely snuck in. So Mahomes has got to put in a few more years, but he is a special athlete who does things on the football field that you just don't see other dudes do.
So my final quarterback, I have Elway here. There's a bunch of guys that, like Terry Bradshaw, I thought about. Warren Moon came up on the list. But I had to go with Elway at 5.
Okay. I'm just going to chat a little bit about some of our future episodes. We've got NBA, MVP candidates for next year. Where's the Greek Freak going to sign? Lions, Pistons, rebuilds. Some of the most underrated and overrated guys of all time. We are also going to talk about introducing some guests. We've had some shout-outs from some of the Fight Club dudes and the Attridge boys and some of Isaac's crew from the NRL. We're going to introduce some guests. And again, we're going to talk about some non-sports things as well.
Yeah, we'll do some Rocky episodes, do Star Wars episode.
Yeah, which is the best Rocky? The best thing about a Rocky movie?
There's always one after.
There's always one after that. They play like 5 in a row. Mm-hmm. Daniela hates that. Star Wars character ratings, greatest villains ever. Some of the
best action movies.
Yeah, some of the most underrated movies and some overrated movies.
What's the best action movie ever?
Best action movie ever.
It's not a question.
Off the top of my head.
It's not a question. Depends what you, because you can go all over with action.
See, Marvel, I'm going to say Endgame. I'm not sure if you count that as an action movie.
Endgame's sweet. I love Endgame.
Yeah.
But let's look at strictly when you think of action movie, Die Hard.
Okay. Die Hard's best Christmas movie ever. I'm not sure if it's best action movie ever.
But then other action, if you count T2, I would count that as an action movie.
Yeah, that's got to be up there.
A lot of sci-fi.
Got to be up there.
I don't know if you would count Aliens, the second one. That's a war epic, essentially. Aliens is sweet. Any of the Lethal Weapons, any of the first 2 Lethal Weapons are sweet. Predator, I count as an action movie. Predator, I've got pretty
Predator's
high.
awesome.
First Predator's sweet.
just want to chat about a couple of future episodes. We want to get some guys on here that actually have some real sports experience rather than just like Monday Night Old Guy basketball or NRL basketball. We want to get Luke Wilson, who I know was the starting tight end for the Ravens today. We want to get Dakota Shepley, who's this far away from starting for the Niners. We want to get Mike Cavey from the University of Windsor. We want to have some fun.
I want to name my guys. A couple of my guys I want on.
Please do.
Evan, we're gonna get you on, buddy. In terms of Star Wars, Knox Dale, I know you guys would want in on that. So if we do Star Wars, we'll get you on. But Evan, if we have you on, we're probably not gonna go LeBron versus Mike. Like, I don't think we'll start with that.
No, that would be a bad take.
If we build some rapport, then maybe we can get LeBron versus Mike, because it's not even a debate to have that Michael is far and away the best. Is LeBron even top 3? We'll get there. We'll do all-time NBA rankings. I think that's something that we can definitely do. But yeah, we want to have some guests later on.
Okay, and then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to work in some musical content from Andrew McLeod, because we don't want to get sued by playing Eminem, because we love Eminem, but he might sue us because there's going to be at least 40 or 45 people watching this show. Just want to say thanks for tuning in. Live from the LFX studios, this is The Truth with Tal Isaac. Have a good night.